right, good morning and welcome to the August 24th, 2022 meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. My name is Jill Barnett and I'm the General Manager here at Lextran. I would like to turn the meeting over to our Chairman Harding Dowell for a call to order.
Okay, call the meeting to order and we'll call the roll. Ms. Rogers.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Capo.
Here.
Mr. Motley is absent. Mr. Schoninger.
Here.
Mr. Ward. Here. Judge Thurston.
Here.
And Ms. Gonzalez is absent. We'll now move into public comment. Is there any for today? Seeing none, thank you. We will move to approve the July 2022 board meeting minutes. Has anyone had a chance to read those, and are there any edits?
I just have one.
Yeah.
It looks like just a typo. It has me both present and absent.
Which were you?
I was actually absent,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
But I like, that could be,
You were very talented.
handy in the future.
Yes. Schrodinger's judge.
Thank you.
All right. Noting that change to the minutes, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. There is no chair's report this month, so we will move directly into the performance report and financials.
All right.
Mr. Combs.
Mr. Combs will deliver the performance report. Before that, there was one thing that I wanted to mention that had some questions from board members last week. As you may have read in the newspaper, council approved the rate change on some property taxes for some municipal services. There was some concern over whether or not that would impact Lextran. The Lextran tax rate was set in 2004 by a property tax referendum that was voted on by the voters, so there's no immediate concern related to that. And we had a board member ask a question that be addressed during the meeting, so I did want to bring that up. With that, I don't have any other announcements, and we'll turn the performance report over to Mr. Combs.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Happy to present our July performance report. As always, we serve people in our community with mobility solutions. So highlights from last month, we were the recipient of an AdWheel Award from the American Public Transportation Association in the category of Best Marketing and Communications on COVID-19, shoestring tactic. The images on the screen are parts of that campaign. The top two images, that's some internal communications that we did for vaccine encouragement. And the bottom two images are external communications, one being a map of vaccine locations in the city, reference to Lextran routes, and then a flyer that was posted on board. This one's in Spanish. We had that in English as well. On July 18th, we hosted an on-site job fair that resulted in 14 interviews. And there were 13 upgraded bus stops open to the public under the Rider Amenities at Many Places program. I have a short presentation, more information on that program later. So I will touch on that in a moment.
Brett, is the shoestring tactic category an indication of the budget that we spent?
It is.
Okay. Thank you.
4 accommodations from last month. I'm going to jump around here on you a little bit. The second one, Kelly Hall, a bus operator, is an excellent driver, very friendly. She cares about the passengers anytime I ride. She is always nice to me. And we've had 2 from Andrea Jones, customer service representative. I'll read the last one. I wanted to let Lextran know that Andrea Jones helped me while being courteous and professional. She was all smiles, polite, efficient, and gives 105%. She rocks. So kudos to our team for those accommodations. Jumping over to ridership, on fixed route in July, we dipped a little bit below where we had been compared to our average. However, that is about 20,000 more trips than July of 2021. Our weekday averages was a little bit better. I'll walk through that a little bit more when we get to the other slide. And then on the paratransit side of things, we did dip below where we were last year by about 100 trips on paratransit. We'll see that the distance between the average ridership magnified on our percentage change relative to the monthly average. Where on fixed route, we were at about negative 26%, and on paratransit, about negative 10%. Some of that, especially on the fixed route side, had to do with this interesting way that the calendar fell. We had more weekdays last July than we did this July, based on the way that the holiday fell and just by the way that the calendar fell. So while you'll see on the weekday ridership there's only 7,000 more trips, we actually had 1,000 more average per day on weekday in July, that's showing a good that good recovery, just the way the calendar went, it looks a little funny as you look down this chart. That said, if you look at the total revenue miles and hours, we were less this month than we were last month. Again, that's because we had a fewer weekday service days than we did last year. Trips per mile per hour on fixed route are coming in stronger than what they were last year, so I think that sort of paints the picture of why you see different numbers showing you different things. Then on the paratransit side, again, we were about 100 trips less than what we were last year. Again, that same impact of the different number of weekdays would come into play here, but also we are aware of the on-time performance issue that we've seen. This is our 4th month below 70% on-time performance that we are going to continue to work through as this transition over to our ATP div happens. On safety, our preventable accidents, we're right in line with where we have been on fixed route. We did have a bit of an anomaly on the injury frequency rate for the month of July. Sometimes that's just, it all seems to happen at once sometimes. So a bit of bad luck there. That's also reflected in our workers' compensation claims, which leads into the days of lost time. We did see a couple more accidents on wheels than what we normally would and what we did last year, but again, hopefully that's just one of those bad luck kind of months and things will even out as we progress through the fiscal year.
Fred, explain what the injury frequency rate is telling us.
That is the number of injuries that we've had relative to the number of hours that we have worked in the month. Is that correct, John?
That's correct. It's based on how many hours you work annually divided by the number of weeks versus the number of injuries, and then that's where you come up with this number as it reflects per work.
So all right, so suppose that there are no injuries the rest of the year. Does that number come down every month?
That number is based on a frequency rate based on what actually occurred for the hours worked, and it will reflect over a 12-month period where that would average out, and obviously that would come down.
Yeah. So it doesn't look high because it's the first month.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Does it just look high because it's the first month?
The year-to-date number, yes.
Yes, and well, and it also is reflected too, we had a couple of serious accidents where the employees were injured in vehicular accidents. Those are included even though it was no fault of their own. Some lost time due to their injuries and those type of things. And then we had a couple where we had some inattentive employees. One was a slip and fall, so it's really just the frequency based on how many hours we work versus how many employees we have divided by the weeks, and you do it based on 100,000 hours.
Okay.
So on maintenance, nearly 13,000 miles between roll calls in July. So we are ahead of our pace that we set last year, and I think that's a pretty strong number. We completed 52 of 52 preventive maintenance inspections, so we're 100% on that metric. And that is all I have for the performance report. Happy to answer any questions or pass it on to Ms. Falconberry for the financials.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Fred.
Good morning. Okay, we'll look at the financials for the month of July. I say this every year. July is always my favorite month because there's only 1 month in the fiscal year. Operating cash is strong at this point. We ended the year at a very good point, so our operating cash is strong. 2 notes to make on here. The long-term note for the Lextran Foundation, that will come off of the financials for next month. I'm waiting on the auditors to assist in that entry. And then also the long-term asset for pension, that will change. They will give me the year-end entry for that, so you will see those 2 numbers. Well, the note will be gone next month and the long-term asset will change. But everything else should remain the same. It's very similar to last year, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
So going forward, Nikki,
Mm-hmm.
comparing to last year, our total assets is going to be less. Is that right? Because of the foundation number coming off.
Yes, that will come off, but we also will put the assets that Lextran Real Properties owned, such as the property here, we will put those on there. That's part of what I'm waiting for from the auditors.
Okay.
So that will become part of the assets
balances
because
to that.
Lextran Real Property dissolved and turned everything, ownership of everything over to Lextran.
Okay.
So,
So will that appear in the net capital and related assets line item?
yes. Okay, statement of revenue and expenses. Property tax, of course, is always zero in the month of July because what we receive in July is for June, so it goes back to the previous year. Passenger revenue is starting well this year. With Fred said, we budgeted about $81,000 for the month, and we came in at $90,000, so we're very happy with that. Federal funds for the month is a timing thing, so that is not something that, it's not that we won't get any federal funds, it's just a timing. So that will show up later in the month.
Quick question. Other revenue. Am I missing something that the first month and the year-to-date is less?
The other revenue for that is where the Lextran Real Properties closed. Lextran Real Properties and Lextran Foundation had a total cash of $908,000. So that got transferred over to Lextran in the month of July. So when we did the budget, we didn't know how much that would be. So we didn't budget nearly $900,000. We thought it would be less than that. So we did receive $908,000. So that does come back to Lextran. And that's part of that money is the, if you remember in the last 7 years, we've paid a lease payment. Lextran paid a lease payment to Lextran Real Properties. So that's where that money came from, and that was used to pay fees and everything. So now that it's dissolved, all the money comes back to Lextran. So everything for our expenses, pretty much under budget. We're continuing to watch diesel fuel, obviously, and our paratransit expenses for the month. It was about $4,600 over budget, but we will be doing a budget amendment later in the year for that due to the new contract with RATP Dev. So, but everything else looks pretty good for the first month of the year. Any more questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, there are no action items on the agenda for today, but there is a change order report as was distributed. Jill, you have a description for that?
Yes, this change order report that was given to you is for information only. It is not of an amount substantial enough that the board requires action today. This change order is related to our contract to purchase fuel. That contractor is with Petroleum Traders. There was a very marginal increase in the price per gallon that Lextran pays, and whether that is diesel or unleaded gasoline, there is a difference in the amount more or less per gallon than the OPUS rate, and that is described to you on your change order. The reason for this change order that was requested was due to the volatility in the labor market, volatility in fuel prices, and also increases in the price of freight. So that, again, is nominal. Stephanie Hope was generous enough to give me what the amount would have been in the previous fiscal year. The total would have been about $3,500 last year, so may anticipate that moving forward. But again, not significant enough that the board requires action today. But did want to report on that to you because that was a change to the contract. Any questions?
Is there specific contractual language in our agreement with Petroleum Traders as to the amount and frequency of these kind of increases?
I will check on that for you. But obviously, if it became very frequent or an amount that was of concern, certainly we would not just continue to accept them. We would either put that back out for bid or have a discussion with the board and finance committee about the appropriate action to take.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Moving into old business, Mr. Combs, you have the ramp update.
All right. the rider amenities in many places, as we call RAMP, program update for August. Our mission statement again, we serve people in our community with mobility solutions. So to get us started with the RAMP program, you can really trace it back to 2017 when we did a transit route facilities inventory that gave us some information about all of our stops, including accessibility information. We really found that we were doing a pretty good job of shelters and benches at places where we have high ridership or high boardings. On the other end of the trip, where you have people getting off the bus or alighting the bus, you don't want them to step off into grass, or if they have a mobility device, into mud or a ditch. So we wanted to build some boarding pads that helps that safety and accessibility of our system as a whole. We also wanted to expand partnerships with local businesses, which we've done with like Beaumont Circle businesses, Amazon. We have some redevelopment opportunities on like the Regency Center on Nicholasville Road. So all that sort of ties together into what we call the RAMP program. To get started with the financial sort of history of the program, we were awarded 5310 grant awards for improvements in accessibility, ADA accessibility improvements. That was for federal fiscal year 2016, and then again in federal fiscal year 2018. Those combined was about a $500,000 award for accessibility. We since won another 5310 grant award in this past federal fiscal year for solar lighting installations. We've had conversations some time ago at the board level about accelerating the amount of shelters that we put out into the community and really focusing on improving our stops, to which we budgeted $150,000 a year in our last budget and $150,000 a year in the budget year that we're in now, which combined together is $300,000 in investments, local, and that's $5,307. You tie all that together, we're at a little over $1 million in combined investment in bus stops, and that is pretty impressive. So what does that sort of look like in the field? I have some images here. The top two, Nicholasville Road, which is a new shelter, Connigrove Towers, which is one of the very few replacements that we've done. You can see shelters in different contexts. The Broadway at Loudon is a boarding pad, actually near the building here. You can imagine if you are trying to get off the bus as an outbound stop. That's much easier to do if you have a mobility device. Then Oxford at Versailles, that is a very small sidewalk connection. And we're not in the sidewalk building business, so we don't want to do a corridor of sidewalks, but when we find locations where a little bit of sidewalk work will help connect the bus stop, we're more than happy to look at that. Some additional examples. So this is the Lexington Clinic stop. That was in a partnership with Lexington Clinic when they did their expansion on South Broadway. I think this is a great one at Armstrong Mill and Tates Creek. That feels like a place that you want to be. I mean, that's aesthetically pleasing. You got some nature around that feels like a very good bus stop. The North Limestone at New Circle example here, this was during construction. It's since opened, but that shows some of the good work that our contractor Shellcon has done. You can see the sidewalk is still open. They've got the lane of traffic blocked off, formed up, ready to pour some concrete, and that would be just a boarding pad there. An example of a freestanding bench that we don't do a whole lot of anymore. A lot of locations where we had benches, we've upgraded 2 shelters. This is an example of one in Palumbo with a boarding pad and a trash can, and then another shelter on Alexandria and Davenport. So if we want to take the program and look at it citywide to show where these improvements are happening, here's a map that describes where our stops are that we've improved. To date, we've invested a little over $500,000. That's covered 57 stops, 17 shelters, 7 minor sidewalk connections. We've got 4 freestanding benches in there. Nearly all of these stops have had some work done on the boarding pads. We've had some boarding pad repair included in that. In the past year alone, as we had those discussions at the board level that we wanted to really accelerate the number of shelters. We've improved 23 stops. 12 of the 17 shelters have come within the last year, and at a total cost of about $325,000. We still have 2 stops that are yet to be sort of closed out and open to the public that should come in the next couple of weeks. But we'll sort of close out this current phase of RAMP. So our next round work has begun to identify the next stops that we want to look at for accessibility improvements, for shelters for benches, and then that new 5310 grant award for the solar lighting project. So that's our big next step of the RAMP program. I'm happy to take any questions about our RAMP program.
What's the solar light component?
So that was a 5310 grant award that would go above and beyond the ADA. And we can do solar lighting installations at shelters that would improve security. So
Nice.
you can see and it would improve visibility for operators to see that people are waiting on the bus.
Gotcha.
So we have some work to do to determine where those will go. That will be coming, not immediately, but in the future.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We're really proud of that
Yeah.
application because it's so multifaceted in that it, gets at some of the accessibility for people with low vision or other vision impairments, security,
Safety.
also safety.
Yeah.
And that's, for
For everybody.
everyone, using the stop season as our operator's approach as well. So we're really proud of that and excited to begin work on that. I'm really proud of this map and all of the work that we have done in the last several years to make these improvements to our service, to the passenger experience out in the community. So I think we need to celebrate this and be very proud of the work that we have done and be proud of the work that you've done as the board to make that investment for our community.
Do we ever put that out on social media?
We haven't yet because it's relatively new. However,
I think-
always need to celebrate
Yeah.
our success.
And I think, has the news picked that up?
Not yet.
Yeah, I was
It has been a frenzy of a couple of months in getting
Yeah.
a lot of this work done. So
It's just really impressive.
a lot of what you've seen has been some really recent work. With Shellcon, our contractor, Fred referenced earlier, they are newer to us and have really performed work at an accelerated pace compared to the previous contractor that we worked with,
Yeah.
and we've been very, very pleased
great.
with that. So as we wrap up the summer and have some of these finish some of the more substantial work, that's certainly something worth celebrating.
Have they been completed long enough to get any feedback from the riders?
Not quite. We don't have a tremendous amount of feedback from passengers yet,
Yeah,
but
yeah, we've heard a few comments.
things.
But stuff like ridership analysis before, after, they've not been out there long enough for that to come through.
Just to remind folks that aren't on the finance committee, this is a topic that we've brought up several times in the finance committee to make sure that we fund that 150,000 instead of what it used to be, so that we can make a bigger impact. So,
Am I right in
Great
recalling
news.
that before, because I remember this was former board member Chrisman's sort of outgoing salvo was making sure that we funded this. I believe the original number was 50,000 and we raised it to 150?
it was 75.
75, okay, I knew it was an order of magnitude.
It had been 75,000 for a number of years previously, and we doubled that investment for the next several years.
Great.
Thank you.
Keep it going, thank you.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, moving to new business.
New business, I have obviously shared this with the board, but wanted to have the chance to say it publicly. We are proud again to announce that Lextran was awarded a 2022 low or no emissions grant award through the Federal Transit Administration. That is a program that has existed for a number of years. However, the bipartisan infrastructure law really plussed up that program and made a lot of new opportunities for folks to go after awards. You may recall that in a couple board meetings ago, I mentioned that the low or no emissions program this time had a set aside, if you will, for the low emissions aspect. Even though it's been called low or no emissions for a number of years, there have been little to no awards given for low emission vehicles. So our grant proposal this time was to fund CNG vehicles, compressed natural gas, which we do have some of already. This will also allow us to add a second compressor to our CNG fueling station and some infrastructure improvements in our maintenance facility. So very excited there. That's approximately $6.4 million, which was our full request. So very exciting. It's one of the largest awards we have received in a long time, and that was a competitive program. So wanted to have the chance to say that publicly and again celebrate that success as well.
so bus delivery will be what, 2024?
That would probably be about right, yes.
Okay. At some point, show us the fleet aging
Mm-hmm.
and
What this
go
does
out
to
to
the fleet.
2024 so
Yes.
that everybody can see where we are.
Okay.
And hopefully that can correspond with the miles between service number as well,
Yes.
because we'll have a newer fleet.
Yes,
And
very
get rid
much.
of all the
The oldies.
Yeah.
The goodies.
Not
Yes.
goodies.
They're delivering service, so they are goodies.
Yeah.
They're goodies right now.
They're goodies, they're delivering service, yes.
Well done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Congrats.
And, you know,
I had
go ahead.
was there a workforce training component to it in the grant that we won as well? I thought I read that in the press release.
That is correct. There is a small amount of that grant budget that is devoted to workforce development. So that's some additional training for folks in our maintenance garage, as well as training for the operators that use it. So there, that was an important component that was requested in the notice of opportunity this time. So that is there, Jamie. Thank you.
Looking ahead to proposed agenda items for September.
Yes, for September, we do have a number of resolutions for the board. So that may be a slightly longer meeting. We have some resolutions to approve our Title VI plan, which we've discussed previously. A couple of contracts to award in the maintenance department related to fasteners and shop supplies, rebuilt engines, plumbing services. Those are agenda items for September. In September, we will also need to schedule a finance committee meeting closer to the end of the month. So for the members of the finance committee, I will touch base with you, and Nikki and I will get that set up because that will tee us up for the audit report in October. The audit is underway currently, and so thanks to our team at Crow, we don't have anyone from Crow here today, but also our finance, procurement, and human resources departments. That is a very big lift because that's where the majority of information requests live. So thanks to the team for that.
All right. Is there any need for closed session today?
I do not have a need for closed session.
Anybody? All right. Then we stand adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
That's like short meeting.
Wow.
32.
Personal record.
That is a record.